I never thought I'd be the kind of person to keep secrets from my own daughter. But there I was, sitting in her pristine living room in Portland, watching her life unfold while holding on to something she had no idea about. My name is Margaret Sullivan, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had figured out how to be a good mother, a supportive grandmother, and most importantly, how to stay out of the way. My daughter Emily always said I was too helpful, too present, too much. So after my husband Robert passed away 4 years ago, I learned to pull back. I learned to wait for invitations. I learned to be grateful for whatever scraps of time my family could spare for me. Emily married James Park when she was 28. He's a wonderful man, truly. Second-generation Korean-American, works in finance, treats my daughter like a queen. They have 2 beautiful children, Sophia, who's 7, and little Ethan, who just turned 4. On paper, they're the perfect American family. Emily worked so hard to build this life. Yale graduate, successful marketing executive, beautiful home in the West Hills. She did everything right. And me? I was just supposed to be the grateful mother who showed up when called and disappeared when dismissed. It started small, like these things always do. After Robert died, Emily began suggesting I was lonely. She'd call every Sunday, her voice tight with obligation, asking if I was eating properly, if I'd made any friends at the senior center. The calls felt more like welfare checks than conversations. When I'd try to share something about my day, maybe a funny story about my neighbor's cat or the book I was reading, I could hear her attention drifting. The sound of her typing, the murmur of her telling James something, the sudden, "Sorry, Mom, Sophia needs me. Can I call you back?" She never did. Then came the suggestions. "Mom, have you thought about moving into one of those active senior communities? You know, where you could have activities and people your own age?" Translation: stop depending on us for social interaction. Mom, maybe you should get a dog. For company. Translation: stop expecting us to fill that role. I went along with it. I smiled and said I'd think about it. I stopped calling as much. I waited for her to reach out first, which happened less and less frequently. When I did see them, usually on holidays or Sophia's school events, Emily would spend the entire time on her phone or redirecting the conversation away from anything I tried to contribute. If I mentioned a recipe I'd made, she'd talk about her meal delivery service. If I mentioned a place I'd been, she'd talk about their upcoming vacation to Hawaii. Without me, of course. The grandchildren barely knew me. Sophia was polite but distant, always busy with her iPad. Ethan would cry if I tried to hold him. "He's just not used to you," Emily would say, not quite meeting my eyes. I understood. I wasn't part of their daily routine. I was the grandmother who showed up occasionally with a Target gift card and a forced smile, the one they had to make time for out of obligation. But here's what Emily didn't know about me. Here's what nobody knew. I spoke fluent Cantonese. Not just restaurant menu Cantonese or thank you goodbye Cantonese. Fluent. Like, read classical Chinese poetry and debate philosophy fluent. I'd spent 3 years in Hong Kong in my early 20s, teaching English at a girls' school. I'd lived with a local family, gone to night markets, celebrated Moon Festival, and fell in love with the language the way you fall in love with a person. Completely. Irrevocably. When I met Robert, I came home. We built our life in Seattle, had Emily, and somehow the language just became part of my past. Something I'd done before real life started. Emily knew I'd taught abroad, but I'd never made a big deal of it. It was just another story from back in my day that she'd roll her eyes at. So when James's mother came to visit from California for 3 weeks in February, nobody thought anything of asking me to help out. Mrs. Park. No, let me be honest. Sun-hee. That's her name, though she introduced herself to me as Mrs. Park with a formal nod, keeping that distance that said she wasn't interested in American-style first-name friendliness with her son's mother-in-law. Sun-hee spoke limited English. She'd lived in the States for 30 years but stayed primarily within the Korean community in Los Angeles. James translated for her most of the time. The visit was supposed to be about her spending time with her grandchildren, teaching them Korean, sharing her culture. Emily called me on a Tuesday afternoon, that familiar edge of stress in her voice. "Mom, I know this is last minute, but could you possibly help out this weekend? James's mother is here, and we have this huge client dinner on Saturday night. We can't bring the kids, and Sunhee doesn't drive. Could you come stay at the house and just be there? Make sure she has what she needs?" My first instinct was to say no, to tell Emily I had plans, that I had a life too, that I couldn't just drop everything. But then I heard it, the exhaustion in her voice, the way she was trying so hard to do it all and be everything to everyone. "Of course, sweetheart," I said. "What time do you need me?" The relief in her voice made something crack in my chest. Saturday came. I arrived at 2 in the afternoon with an overnight bag. Emily greeted me at the door, already dressed for the dinner in a stunning navy dress, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked beautiful. She also looked like she might shatter if someone touched her. "Thank you so much for doing this, Mom," she said, ushering me inside quickly. "Sunhee is in the guest room. She took the kids to the park this morning and they just got back. They're having quiet time now. There's food in the fridge." James left instructions in Korean for his mom about the kids' bedtime routine. "I wrote everything down for you too." She thrust a piece of paper at me. "Where's this dinner?" I asked. "Downtown. That new fusion place, Sakura Blossom. James's firm is trying to land this huge partnership with a Hong Kong investment group. The CEO is flying in specifically for this dinner." She was checking her phone, her purse, her reflection in the hall mirror. "That sounds important. It's huge. Like make or break for James's career, huge. If this goes well, he's looking at a promotion, maybe even partner track." She finally looked at me, really looked at me. "I need everything to be perfect tonight, Mom." "It will be," I said softly. She squeezed my hand, distracted, already mentally at the dinner. "You're a lifesaver. We should be home by 11, midnight at the latest." James came down the stairs, adjusting his tie. He greeted me warmly, always so polite. Then he called out something in Korean toward the guest room. Sunhee emerged, and I watched the family dynamic shift. Sunhee was in her late 60s, elegant in the way of women who've maintained their standards despite everything. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple but expensive-looking sweater set. When she saw me, her expression flickered with something. Not quite disdain, more like resignation, as if she'd been hoping not to have to deal with me. James spoke to her in Korean, explaining the evening. I caught enough to know he was assuring her I'd be there, that the children would be fine, that they wouldn't be late. Sunhee responded, and I kept my face pleasantly neutral. But I understood every word. "You're leaving me with her?" she said, her tone making it clear what she thought of that arrangement. "The children barely know her. She barely knows anything about this family." "Mom, it's fine," James said in Korean, his voice tight. "She's Emily's mother. She's helped before." "When?" Sunhee challenged. "Emily told me she hardly comes around, that she's awkward with the children, that she doesn't understand your life." James didn't argue. That silence said everything. I smiled at Sunhee. "I'm happy to help," I said in English, my voice steady. "Please let me know if you need anything." She gave me a tight smile and nodded, the universal gesture of polite dismissal. Emily and James left in a rush of last instructions and door slams and engine starts. Then it was just me, Sunhee, and the distant sounds of children playing upstairs. Sunhee returned to the guest room without another word to me. I made myself tea in Emily's spotless kitchen, using the kettle she probably got as a wedding gift and never used. I sat at the breakfast bar and looked at the family photos on the walls. There were dozens. Emily and James's wedding, the kids' professional portraits, family vacations, James's parents visiting. I counted. I appeared in 3 photos. 3, out of at least 40. Upstairs, I heard Sophia's voice. "Grandma, can we make cookies?" In Korean, Sunhee responded. "Yes, let's make cookies. Your other grandmother probably doesn't even know how to bake." I set down my tea. My hand was shaking. Sophia came bounding down the stairs. "Grandma Sullivan, Grandma Park says we can make cookies." She was so excited, she actually hugged me. First time in a year. "That sounds wonderful," I managed. "I'll stay out of your way." Sunhee came down, Ethan on her hip. She'd already pulled out mixing bowls and ingredients. She moved through my daughter's kitchen with more familiarity than I had. She knew where the measuring cups were. She knew which drawer had the spatulas. She knew that the oven ran hot and you had to set it 15 degrees lower. I sat on the couch in the living room, pretending to read a magazine, while they baked. I listened to Sun Hee speak to the children in a mix of Korean and broken English. I listened to them laugh. I listened to Sophia say, "You make the best cookies, Grandma." And I listened to Sun Hee say, in Korean, as she cleaned flour off Ethan's face, "It's good you have me, because your other grandmother doesn't even try." Something in me hardened. I made dinner from Emily's prepared meals in the fridge, heated everything exactly as instructed, set the table nicely, called everyone to eat. Sun Hee sat at the head of the table, where James usually sat. I sat at the other end, where Emily usually sat. The children were between us. During dinner, Sophia chatted about school. Sun Hee asked questions, engaged, laughed at the right moments. When Sophia turned to tell me something about her art project, Sun Hee interjected with a story about James's art at that age, smoothly redirecting Sophia's attention. I was being erased in real time. After dinner, bath time. Bedtime routine. Story time. I offered to help with Ethan's bath. No, I have it," Sun Hee said in English, waving me away like I was a servant being dismissed. By 8:30, both kids were in bed. Sun Hee made herself tea and settled in the living room with a Korean drama on her tablet, headphones in. I cleaned up the kitchen, wiped down counters, did dishes that didn't need doing. I could have left then. Should have left. Gone home to my quiet apartment where at least I wasn't actively being ignored. But something kept me there. Around 9, Sun Hee's phone rang. She answered, and I heard her speaking rapidly in Korean. She got up, went into the guest room, but the door didn't quite close. Sound carried in Emily's open concept house. I moved quietly to the hallway, pretending to check the thermostat nearby. No, it's fine," Sun Hee was saying. "I'm managing. Emily's mother is here, but she's useless, just sitting around like furniture. But the children are fine. I've taken care of everything." Pause. What does Emily see in her? I don't know. I think Emily feels obligated. You know how Americans are about obligation to parents, even when the parents contribute nothing. It's not like our culture where elders are truly respected. Pause. Laughter. "Yes, I'll be so glad to get home next week. James is a good son, but Emily, she's so stressed all the time, trying to prove something, and her mother is no help. Can you imagine? She just sits there while I do everything. If she were my mother, I'd be so ashamed." I stood in that hallway, in my daughter's house, listening to myself being discussed like I was an embarrassing problem to be managed. The front door opened. Emily and James were home early, just past 9:30. I could see immediately something was wrong. Emily's face was flushed, her eyes too bright. James looked tense. "Mom?" Emily looked surprised to see me in the hallway. "Is everything okay? Kids all right?" "Perfect," I said. "Sound asleep. You're home early. The dinner." Emily glanced at James. "We need to talk." Sun Hee emerged from the guest room, phone still in hand. She greeted them in Korean, asking about the evening. James responded, and I caught enough to know the dinner had been a disaster. The Hong Kong CEO had brought his wife, who spoke limited English. There'd been a cultural miscommunication about the menu. Something about seating arrangements. The details weren't clear, but the bottom line was, the deal was falling apart. Emily sank onto the couch, her perfect facade cracking. "I tried, James. I tried so hard to make conversation with Mrs. Chen, but I couldn't understand half of what she was saying, and every time I tried to include her in conversation with the others, it just got awkward." James was pacing. I should have prepared better. I should have thought about having a translator there. Mr. Chen seemed offended that we didn't consider his wife might not be comfortable in an all-English environment. Sun Hee was speaking to James in rapid Korean, and I heard her say something that made my blood pressure spike. This is what happens when you marry someone who doesn't understand our culture. Emily tries, but she doesn't truly understand what it means to show respect in these situations. James didn't disagree. He just ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. Emily was staring at her phone. "He already emailed. The deal's off. He's flying back to Hong Kong tomorrow." Her voice cracked. "Your promotion, James. Your partnership." I stood there, invisible again, watching my daughter's world crumble, watching my son-in-law's career aspirations die, watching Sunhee comfort James in Korean while Emily sat alone, isolated by language and culture and her own mother-in-law's quiet judgment. And I made a decision. "What's the CEO's name?" I asked. Everyone looked at me like they'd forgotten I could speak. "What?" Emily said. "The CEO from Hong Kong. What's his name?" James frowned. "Chen Wei-ming." "Why? And his wife?" Chen Li-hua, I think?" "Mom, why?" I pulled out my phone. "What's his email address?" "Mom, what are you doing?" Emily's voice had that edge, that "don't embarrass me" tone I'd heard 1,000 times. "James, his email address." "Now." Something in my voice made him comply. He rattled it off. I typed quickly, my fingers remembering how to compose formal Chinese, even after all these years. "Dear Mr. Chen," I read aloud as I typed, "my name is Margaret Sullivan. I am the mother of Emily Park and grandmother to Sophia and Ethan. I understand there was a regrettable miscommunication this evening at dinner, and I hope you will forgive an old woman for reaching out directly. I would consider it a great honor if you and Mrs. Chen would join my family for dim sum tomorrow morning at Jade Garden at 10 o'clock. I would very much like to meet you both and discuss the partnership that means so much to my son-in-law. I promise you, I speak enough Cantonese to ensure Mrs. Chen will not feel left out of any conversation. Please allow me to show you the respect you were not shown this evening." I hit send before anyone could stop me. The room was silent. "Mom," Emily whispered, "what did you just do?" "You speak Cantonese?" James said, his voice stunned. "Son," he said something in Korean, sharp and disbelieving. I looked at her. And in perfect Korean, because apparently I was going for broke tonight, I said, "Yes, I also speak Korean, which means I heard everything you said about me on the phone 20 minutes ago, and everything you've said about Emily. And for the record, I've been contributing to this family. I've been available whenever asked. I've respected boundaries. What I haven't done is push my way into a space where I was made to feel unwelcome." Sunhee's face went white. Emily stood up slowly. "Mom, you speak Korean?" "How? When?" "Hong Kong in my 20s. Korea after that, actually. I taught there for a year before I met your father. I never mentioned it because—" I paused. "Because you never asked about my life before you, Emily. And I didn't want to be the mother who bores her successful daughter with stories about the old days." My phone buzzed. I looked down. Mr. Chen had responded. "Mrs. Sullivan, what a lovely surprise. My wife and I would be honored to join you for dim sum. We will see you at 10 o'clock. I look forward to conversation in my native tongue with someone who understands respect for elders and cultural traditions. Perhaps this evening was not a complete disaster after all." I showed the email to James. His hands were shaking when he took my phone. He said yes. He looked up at me. "You just saved my career." "I saved my son-in-law's career," I corrected gently. And maybe I reminded everyone that being old doesn't mean being useless. Emily was crying. Not delicate tears. Real, messy, makeup-ruining tears. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I never knew you could. Why didn't you tell me?" "You never asked who I was before I was your mother," I said simply. And somewhere along the way, I forgot I was anyone else. Sunhee stood abruptly. She started to speak, stopped, then said in Korean, "I apologize for my rudeness. I made assumptions." "Yes," I said in Korean. "You did. About me and about your daughter-in-law. Emily works very hard to honor your culture and your son. Perhaps instead of criticizing what she doesn't know, you could teach her. And perhaps you could trust that James chose her for reasons that have nothing to do with how perfect her Korean is." I switched back to English. "Now, I'm going home. Emily, I'll pick you all up at 9:30 tomorrow. Dress nicely. And bring the children." Mr. Chen mentioned in his email that his wife misses her grandchildren back home. "I think Sophia and Ethan will charm her." I picked up my overnight bag. Emily followed me to the door. "Mom, wait. I've been terrible to you. You've been overwhelmed," I said. "There's a difference. I made you feel like you didn't matter." I touched her face, the way I used to when she was small. "You're going to fix that tomorrow." by letting me be part of your life. Not just when you need a babysitter, but really part of it. I want that, she whispered. I want my kids to know you. I want to know you. The real you. Not just the mom who's supposed to stay in the background. Then let's start tomorrow. I went home. Didn't sleep much. Spent half the night refreshing my Cantonese with old textbooks I'd kept in storage. Worried I'd be rusty, that I'd embarrass everyone, that I'd made a terrible mistake. But at 9:30 the next morning, I was parked outside Emily's house in my best dress, my mother's jade pendant around my neck. They all came out together. Emily, James, the kids, and even Sun-hee, who gave me a small, respectful nod when she got in the car. Jade Garden was a dim sum institution in Portland's Chinatown. When we arrived, Mr. and Mrs. Chen were already there, looking elegant and expensive, and exactly like people who could make or break James's career. I greeted them in Cantonese. Mrs. Chen's entire face lit up. She clasped my hands and responded rapidly, telling me how relieved she was, how isolated she'd felt last night, how grateful she was that someone understood. For the next 2 hours, I translated. I facilitated. I made sure Mrs. Chen felt included in every conversation. I ordered dim sum in Cantonese, explaining to Emily and the kids what each dish was. I told stories about living in Hong Kong that made Mr. Chen laugh, and Mrs. Chen touch my arm with that particular Chinese gesture of affection between women of a certain age. Sophia and Ethan were shy at first, but Mrs. Chen won them over with a game she played with her own grandchildren. Soon Ethan was sitting in her lap, giggling. Mr. Chen and James talked business, but comfortably now, with me translating nuances and cultural context that made all the difference. At one point, Mr. Chen said to me in Cantonese, "Your son-in-law is lucky to have you. Family is everything in business. When I see a man whose family supports him with such grace and skill, I know he is a man I can trust." I translated for James. He looked at me with something I hadn't seen before. Respect. By the end of the meal, the deal was back on. Better than before, actually. Mr. Chen was so impressed with the family values of James's household that he agreed to terms more favorable than James had dared hope for. When we said goodbye, Mrs. Chen hugged me. A real hug. She said in Cantonese, "You must visit us in Hong Kong. I will show you how the city has changed. And you must teach me how you raise such a gracious daughter and such a determined son-in-law. Your family is blessed to have you." In the car ride home, nobody spoke for a long time. Finally, Sophia said, "Grandma Sullivan, you're so cool." That broke the tension. Everyone laughed. James turned around from the front seat. "Margaret, Mom, I don't know how to thank you. You can start by inviting me to Sunday dinners," I said lightly. "Every Sunday," Emily said immediately. "Every single one. And Mom, I want you to teach me. Teach me about your time in Hong Kong and Korea. Teach me who you were before you were just my mom. Teach me the things I should have asked about years ago." Sun-hee spoke up from beside me in the back seat. In careful English, she said, "You very wise woman. You teach me too. How to be better mother-in-law." I took her hand. "We'll teach each other." The promotion came through 2 weeks later. James made partner within 6 months. Mr. Chen became not just a business partner, but a family friend. They visited twice more that year, and each time, Mrs. Chen and I spent hours speaking Cantonese, trading grandmother stories, laughing about our children. Emily started calling me 3 times a week. Real calls, where we talked about everything: her stress at work, my book club, her worries about Sophia, my thoughts on a documentary I'd watched. She asked about Hong Kong, about my teaching years, about the woman I was before motherhood. I taught Sophia Cantonese phrases. She loved learning, loved having this secret skill like her grandmother. Ethan started calling me Po-Po, the Cantonese term for grandmother. Sun-hee and I developed an unlikely friendship. She taught me Korean recipes, I taught her Cantonese ones. We commiserated about our children, laughed about our grandchildren, and sometimes, when it was just us, she'd apologize again for what she'd said that night. "You show me," she said once in mixed English and Korean, "that being grandmother is not just about doing for family, is about being whole person. You teach me I can be both." 6 months after the dim sum breakfast, Emily threw me a birthday party. A real one, not the obligatory cake and card thing from years past. She invited my old teaching colleagues, my neighbors, her family, James's family. In her toast, she said, "I spent so many years thinking my mom was just my mom. Someone who existed in relation to me. Someone whose job was to support my life. I never bothered to find out who she was as a person, what she'd done, what she could do. And I almost missed out on knowing one of the most interesting, talented, graceful women I'll ever meet. Mom, thank you for being patient with me while I grew up enough to see you clearly. And thank you for not giving up on us." I cried. The good kind of crying. Later, after everyone had left and Emily and I were cleaning up, she asked me something that had clearly been bothering her. "Mom, why didn't you ever tell me about the languages, about your life before? Why did you just let me treat you like you were boring?" I thought about it carefully, because somewhere along the way, I bought into the narrative that being a mother meant erasing yourself, that my job was to be in the background, supporting, never competing or complicating. And when you started pulling away, when you started seeming embarrassed by me or burdened by me, I thought the problem was that I was too much. So I tried to be less present, less interesting, less demanding. I thought that's what you needed from me. That's so sad, Mom. It was, I agreed. But also, it taught me something. It taught me that love isn't about making yourself smaller so other people are comfortable. It's about being fully yourself and trusting that the people who really love you will love all of you, even the parts that surprise them. She hugged me, fierce and tight. I love all of you, every surprising part. That was 8 months ago. Now I see my grandchildren twice a week. I teach Sophia Cantonese every Saturday morning. Emily and I have lunch every Wednesday, just the two of us, where she asks me about my life and actually listens to the answers. James calls me for advice on Chinese business culture. Sunhee and I text each other grandmother memes. Last month, Emily asked me to go with her on a business trip to Hong Kong. She had presentations to give, clients to meet, and she wanted me there to help navigate cultural nuances. We stayed an extra week after her business was done, and I showed her the school where I taught, the family I'd lived with, the markets I'd loved. We ate street food and took the ferry and stood on Victoria Peak watching the lights come on across the harbor. "This is where you came alive," Emily said, looking at me in the glow of the city lights. "Before Dad, before me. This is where you were, just Margaret." "Yes," I said, "and I loved it. But I loved being your mother, too. I loved you more than I loved any of this." "You shouldn't have had to choose," she said. "You shouldn't have had to give up Margaret to be Mom." I didn't give her up, I realized. I just forgot her for a while. But she was always there, waiting for someone to ask her to come back. "I'm asking," Emily said. "I'm asking Margaret to stick around, because my kids need to know their grandmother isn't just someone who shows up when called. She's someone who lived in Hong Kong and speaks 3 languages and saved my husband's career with 1 email. She's someone extraordinary, and I want them to know that." We stood there on the peak, mother and daughter, and for the first time in years, I felt fully seen, fully known, fully valued for everything I was, not just what I could do for others. This morning, I got a message from Emily. "Sunday dinner at our place. Bring your old photos from Hong Kong. Sophia wants to do a school presentation on her cool grandma's adventures. I told her you probably have amazing stories. Please come prepared to brag." I'm going through those old photos now. Me at 24, standing in front of my school in Wan Chai. Me with my host family's grandmother, learning to make zongzi. Me on a junk boat in Aberdeen Harbor, young and free and absolutely certain I could do anything. That girl is still in here somewhere. And finally, after all these years, she has people who want to know her. I never thought keeping a secret about speaking Cantonese would change my life. But it wasn't really about the language, was it? It was about remembering that I'm more than just somebody's mother, more than just somebody's grandmother, more than just the woman who stays in the background making everyone else's life easier. I'm Margaret Sullivan. I lived in Hong Kong. I speak 3 languages. I saved a business deal with 1 email. I raised a daughter who finally learned to see me. And I'm not done yet. Not even close.